I never meant to see it. I swear I didn't. That morning in Seattle was the kind of gray, damp dawn that makes the city feel like it's breathing through wet concrete. Rain tapped lightly on the windshield of my old Subaru as I drove into the underground parking garage of Hailtech's headquarters downtown. It was just past 7, earlier than usual, because the printers on the 12th floor had been glitching again, spitting out blank pages, or jamming halfway through reports. I was the only IT guy on the early shift, so it was my problem to fix. I parked in my usual spot near the service elevator, grabbed my toolkit, and headed up. The building was still quiet. Most people didn't start trickling in until 8. The 12th floor smelled like fresh coffee from the break room and the faint ozone of warm electronics. I headed straight for the copy room, but the machine was dead again. I sighed, plugged in my laptop, and started running diagnostics. It would take 20 minutes at least. I needed to use the restroom before I got lost in troubleshooting. The men's room at the end of the hall was locked. A small sign hung on the door. Maintenance in progress. I stared at it for a second, debating whether to wait or find another one. The floor was empty. No one would notice if I used the one next door, the single-occupancy unisex bathroom they kept for executives and visitors. I pushed the door open. The light flicked on automatically, bright and sterile. Everything looked normal. White tiles, stainless steel sink, a single mirror. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and froze. There, in the small metal trash can next to the toilet, was a pregnancy test. It wasn't buried. It wasn't wrapped in tissue. It lay on top of a crumpled paper towel, white plastic stick with the window facing up. 2 pink lines, clear, unmistakable. My stomach dropped. I stood there, staring at it like it might disappear if I blinked. My brain short-circuited. Who would leave something like this in a corporate bathroom? Hailtech wasn't the kind of place where people got careless. This was the company that made software for banks and hospitals. Everything was tracked, audited, sanitized. No one left personal evidence lying around. I bent down not to touch it, just to confirm what I already knew. 2 lines. Positive. I straightened up, heart hammering. I washed my hands even though I hadn't used the toilet. The water felt cold. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Same tired eyes, same 5 o'clock shadow I hadn't bothered to shave. Same guy who fixed printers and reset passwords. I told myself to forget it. It wasn't my business, it wasn't my problem. I dried my hands, took a breath, and reached for the door. When I pulled it open, she was standing there. Emily Carter, CEO of Hailtech. 46 years old, sharp suit, dark hair pulled back. The same woman I waved to every morning when I walked my dog along the path behind our apartment complex in Belltown. The same woman who'd once asked me in passing if I thought the new coffee shop on the corner was any good. We'd exchanged maybe a dozen sentences over the 2 years we'd lived across from each other. Polite, neighborly, nothing more. Now she was standing in the hallway, phone in hand, face pale. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a second, neither of us moved. She saw me come out of the wrong bathroom. She knew what was in there. Her voice came out low, controlled, but there was an edge to it I'd never heard before. What did you see? The question hit like a slap. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. My throat felt dry. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Nothing, I managed. I just needed to use the bathroom. The men's was locked. She didn't blink. She studied my face like she was trying to decide if I was lying. The hallway was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of the elevator bell somewhere down the corridor. Her eyes flicked past me, toward the open door of the bathroom, then back to me. "You're sure?" she asked. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, I'm sure." She didn't say anything else. She just stood there, phone still clutched in her hand, knuckles white. Then she stepped aside, letting me pass. I walked out, legs stiff, toolkit suddenly heavy in my hand. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I made it to the copy room, sat down at the printer, and stared at the screen without seeing it. My hands were shaking. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the 2 lines, her face, the question. What did you see? I didn't know what she thought I'd seen. I didn't know if she thought the test was hers. I didn't know if she was scared I'd tell someone. All I knew was that in the span of 5 minutes, I'd gone from fixing a printer to holding a secret I never asked for. And the worst part? I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not as the CEO who signed my paychecks, not as the neighbor who smiled politely, as a woman who, for the first time in the 2 years I'd known her, looked vulnerable. And I had no idea what to do with that. The days after that morning blurred into a haze of unease that I couldn't shake. I went back to the copy room, plugged in my laptop, and stared at the diagnostic screen as it crawled through its checks. The printer whirred back to life eventually, spitting out test pages like nothing had happened. But something had. I kept replaying her voice in my head. "What did you see?" It wasn't accusatory exactly, more like a probe, testing if I'd crack. I didn't. I fixed the printer, logged the ticket as resolved, and headed back to my desk on the 10th floor. But every step felt heavier, like I was carrying an invisible weight. At first, I told myself it was paranoia. Emily Carter was the CEO, untouchable, unflappable. She'd built Hailtech from a startup in a garage to a multi-million-dollar firm that powered half the cloud services on the West Coast. I'd seen her in board meetings on the company intranet, dismantling investors with a single slide. She was 46, divorced, or at least that's what the rumor mill said, and lived alone in the apartment across the courtyard from mine. We weren't friends, but we weren't strangers. I'd helped her once with a jammed garage door opener during a storm last winter. She'd thanked me with a bottle of wine I never opened. That was it. But now, everything felt off. The first sign came in the elevator the next day. I stepped in on the ground floor, coffee in hand, and there she was, standing in the back corner, scrolling her phone. Normally, she'd look up, nod, maybe say something about the rain. Not this time. Her eyes flicked toward me for a split second, then back down. The doors closed, and the silence stretched. I pressed 10. She was going to 15, the executive suite. I could feel her presence like static electricity. When the doors opened on my floor, I muttered a quick, "Have a good day," out of habit. She didn't respond. It happened again in the hallway later that week. I was walking to a meeting with the dev team when she turned the corner, flanked by two VPs. Our eyes met, hers sharp, mine probably wide like a deer in headlights. She looked away first, mid-stride, without breaking pace. No nod, no acknowledgement. It was like I'd become invisible, or worse, radioactive. The office started to feel smaller. Hailtech had over 500 employees, but word traveled fast in the break rooms and Slack channels. By the end of the week, I overheard snippets. In the kitchen, two admins whispering, "Emily's been snapping at everyone in meetings. Something's up." At lunch, a guy from sales. "Heard there's internal drama upstairs, maybe a leak or something." And then the one that made my skin crawl. Overheard in the men's room of all places. "Saw that IT kid coming out of the exec bathroom the other day. Weird, right?" They didn't say my name. They didn't have to. I was the only one on early shift that morning. I started avoiding the 12th floor unless absolutely necessary. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. I buried myself in tickets, resetting firewalls, troubleshooting VPNs, anything to keep my head down. But the paranoia crept in. Was she watching me? Had she checked the security cams? Hailtech had eyes everywhere, keycard logs, CCTV. If she wanted to know exactly when I'd entered that bathroom, she could find out in minutes. Outside work, it was even worse. Our apartment complex in Belltown was one of those mid-rise buildings with a shared courtyard. Green space, benches, a fountain that gurgled all night. I'd see her car in the lot most evenings, a sleek black Tesla that screamed executive perks. Before, running into her was no big deal. We'd exchange hellos while I walked my dog, Max, a scruffy mutt I had adopted last year. She'd sometimes stop to pet him, ask about his breed. "He's got some lab in him, I think," I'd say. "Looks like a troublemaker," she'd reply with a laugh. Now, avoidance was the game. One evening about a week after the incident, I was out with Max when I spotted her on her balcony. She was leaning on the railing, glass of red wine in hand, staring out at the city lights flickering across the sound. The sun had dipped low, painting everything orange and gold. She looked exhausted, not the polished CEO from the office. Her hair was down, loose waves over her shoulders, and she wore a simple sweater that hung off one side. No makeup, just her, raw and real. Max tugged at the leash, pulling toward her building, like he remembered her treats from before. I yanked him back, heart racing. She turned her head slightly. Did she see me? Our eyes didn't meet, but I felt exposed. I cut the walk short, headed back inside, and locked the door like I was hiding from something. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles and wondered, what if she thinks I'm going to spill? What if she assumes the test was hers and I'm judging her? She was single as far as I knew, no ring, no mentions of a partner in the office gossip. At 46, a pregnancy would be complicated, high risk maybe, and in her position, career suicide if word got out. The board was full of old-school suits who still whispered about work-life balance like it was code for weakness. I started questioning myself. Why had I gone into that bathroom? Why hadn't I just waited? And deeper, why did I care so much? She wasn't my boss directly. I reported to the IT director, but she signed off on everything. One word from her, and I could be out. But it wasn't just fear, it was something else. Seeing her vulnerable had cracked the image I'd had of her, the untouchable exec. Now she felt human, fragile even. The next day, the whispers got louder. In the Slack channel for my team, someone posted, "Anyone notice Carter's been off? Meetings are tense AF." Replies poured in. "Yeah, heard she chewed out finance yesterday. Probably board pressure." I didn't chime in. I couldn't. By the end of the second week, I was a wreck. I avoided the courtyard, walked Max at odd hours. One night, I saw her car pull in late. Midnight. Headlights cutting through the rain. She got out, umbrella in hand, shoulders slumped. I watched from my window, hidden behind the blinds. She paused at her door, fumbled with keys, then glanced toward my building. Did she know I was there? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I realized then this wasn't just about a test. It was about trust. And somehow, without meaning to, I'd become the one person who could shatter hers. The tension built like a storm cloud over the next few days, thick and unavoidable. I threw myself into work, tackling every ticket that came through. Virus scans, software updates, even volunteering for the overnight server maintenance just to stay busy. But the whispers didn't stop. In the cafeteria, I caught fragments. Carter's been pulling all-nighters, boards breathing down her neck. Yeah, and that IT guy, he's been acting weird too. I pretended not to hear, kept my head down, but it gnawed at me. Was I imagining it, or were people glancing my way more often? Then, on a Thursday afternoon, it happened. I was at my desk, debugging a network glitch for the marketing team when my phone buzzed. Not a Slack message or an email, a direct text from Emily's executive assistant. "Ms. Carter would like to see you in her office, now." No context, no agenda, just now. My stomach twisted into knots. I stood up slowly, grabbed my notebook like it was a shield, and headed for the elevator. The ride up to the 15th floor felt eternal. The doors opened to the executive suite, polished marble floors, glass walls, the hum of quiet power. Her assistant waved me through without a word, and I knocked on the heavy oak door. "Come in." Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The water sparkled under the late afternoon sun, container ships crawling across the horizon like distant insects. Emily stood with her back to me, arms crossed, staring out at the view. She didn't turn around right away. "Close the door," she said. I did, the latch clicking like a lock in a cell. She finally turned, her face composed, but her eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, betrayed a flicker of something raw. Exhaustion? Fear? She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." I sat, notebook in my lap, feeling like a kid in the principal's office. She didn't sit at first. She paced slowly, heels clicking on the hardwood. "You've been avoiding me," she said, not a question. I swallowed. I didn't want to make things awkward. She stopped pacing and leaned against the desk, arms still crossed. "Awkward how?" I met her gaze. There was no point pretending. "Since that morning, in the hallway." She nodded, almost imperceptibly. Then, in a voice so low it was barely audible, "What do you think of me?" The question caught me off guard. It wasn't what I expected, accusation maybe, or a threat to keep quiet. This felt personal. I don't, I respect you, I stammered. You run this place like a machine. Everyone knows that. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, a thin, bitter curve. Respect, that's what they all say. She pushed off the desk and sat down across from me, folding her hands on the polished surface. But that's not what I asked. What do you think of me? After what you saw? My pulse quickened. There it was. I took a breath, steadying myself. It's not my business, whatever it is. She leaned forward slightly. You saw the test. In the trash. I nodded once. No use denying it now. And you think it's mine? I didn't assume. She cut me off with a raised hand. Don't lie. It's written all over your face. You've been looking at me like I'm a ticking bomb since then. I shifted in my seat. Okay, fine. The thought crossed my mind. But like I said, it's not my place to judge. She leaned back, studying me for a long moment. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room. Finally, she sighed. A deep, weary sound that seemed to come from somewhere buried. It's not mine. The words hung in the air. I blinked, processing. What? The test. It belongs to Sarah, my senior assistant. She's 32, married, but the timing? It wasn't planned. She panicked in there, took the test during her break, and in her rush, she didn't wrap it properly. I found it first right after she left. I was going in to dispose of it discreetly when you came out. Relief washed over me, mixed with confusion. So why ask me what I saw? Why all this? Her expression softened, the CEO mask cracking just a little. She stood up again, walked to the window, her silhouette framed against the bay. Because in this world, in my world, one slip, one rumor, and it's over. Sarah's a rising star. She's got potential. But if word got out, the board would see it as a distraction. And me? They'd assume I'm covering for her, or worse, that it's mine. At my age? A single woman running a tech giant? They're already waiting for me to falter. I listened, piecing it together. So you thought I'd talk? She turned back, a wry smile. I didn't know. You're the neighbor who fixes garage doors, the IT guy who keeps the servers running. But people talk, and in this building, talk spreads like wildfire. We sat in silence for a minute. I glanced around the office, awards on the shelves, photos of her shaking hands with tech moguls, a single potted plant that looked like it hadn't been watered in weeks. It hit me then. She was alone up here, no family pictures, no personal touches, just the trappings of power. I wouldn't say anything, I said finally. It's none of my business, and even if it was yours, who am I to judge? She looked at me, really looked like she was seeing me for the first time. You'd be surprised how many would. The board? They're all men in their 60s whispering about stability and focus. I've fought for every inch in this role. Sacrificed marriages, friends, time. And now at 46 they expect me to be a machine. No weaknesses. No life outside these walls. I nodded, feeling a pull I hadn't expected. That sounds exhausting. She laughed, a short, genuine sound. It is. But you get used to it. Or you think you do. She sat back down closer now. Tell me something. Why didn't you say anything? You could have gone to HR or gossiped. But you didn't. I shrugged. Because it felt wrong. Invading someone's privacy like that? Not my style. Her eyes softened. You're a rare breed, then. We talked more after that, first about the test, how she'd reassured Sarah, helped her schedule time off without questions. Then it shifted. She opened up about the pressure. Endless board meetings, investor calls, the constant scrutiny. Being a woman at the top, it's like walking a tightrope with no net. One misstep and they pull it out from under you. I shared a little, too, about my own quiet life. The long hours in IT, how I'd moved to Seattle after college for a fresh start. Nothing dramatic, but she listened. Really listened. For the first time, she wasn't the CEO. She was Emily, the woman who drank red wine on her balcony, who lived alone in a too-big apartment, who maybe needed someone to see her as more than her title. By the time I left, the sun had set, the bay a dark mirror below. She walked me to the door. Thank you, she said softly, for listening. I nodded. Anytime. As the elevator descended, I realized this wasn't over, but now it wasn't just about a secret. It was about trust, and maybe, just maybe, something more. The whispers turned into a roar faster than I expected. After that conversation in her office, I thought things might settle. Maybe we'd reached an understanding, a fragile truce built on shared secrets. But the office ecosystem had a way of amplifying silence into suspicion. By Monday, the rumors had evolved. In the IT break room, my colleague Mike leaned over during lunch. Heard Carter's on the warpath. Chewed out the whole finance team this morning. You think it's board stuff? I shrugged, mumbling something about quarterly reports, but inside my gut twisted. I knew it wasn't just numbers. It was the test, the secret, and now me. The pressure on Emily mounted visibly. She started canceling non-essential meetings, her emails shorter, more curt. I saw it in the way she moved through the halls, shoulders a little tighter, steps a fraction quicker. The board was circling. Hailtech's stock had dipped slightly after a competitor's announcement, and whispers in the executive grapevine suggested they were looking for scapegoats. Stability issues, one email chain called it, leaked accidentally to a shared drive I had access to. I deleted it without reading further, but the damage was done. I knew what stability meant in board speak. No distractions, no scandals, especially not for a woman at the helm. Then came the email that pulled me in deeper. It arrived Tuesday morning from HR. Confidential meeting request. Please report to conference room E at 2 p.m. No details. Just a calendar invite with Emily's name CC'd. My hands went cold. This wasn't about a printer jam. I spent the morning pretending to work. Refreshing diagnostics that didn't need running, my mind racing. What if they thought I was involved? What if Sarah had cracked under pressure and named me? Or worse, what if Emily had decided I was a liability? The conference room was one of those glass-walled fishbowls on the 14th floor with a long oak table and chairs that cost more than my monthly rent. When I walked in, Emily was already there, seated at the head, flanked by two board members I recognized from company bios. Older men in tailored suits, silver hair, expressions like they'd swallowed lemons. HR's director, a stern woman named Linda, sat to the side with a notepad. No one smiled. Sit, Emily said, her voice even but edged. I took the chair farthest from her, notebook in hand like a talisman. One of the board members, a guy named Harlan with a voice like gravel, leaned forward. We'll cut to the chase. There are rumors circulating about irregularities, personal matters affecting leadership focus. Emily's jaw tightened, but she didn't interrupt. Harlan turned to me. You were seen exiting a restricted area last week, the executive facilities. Care to explain? My mouth went dry. Restricted? It was a bathroom, but I knew better than to quip. The men's room was under maintenance. I used the adjacent one. It was an emergency. Linda jotted something down. The other board member, Ellis, chimed in. And during that time, did you observe anything unusual? Unusual, like a pregnancy test in the trash. I glanced at Emily. Her eyes met mine, steady but pleading, warning. I couldn't tell. No, I said firmly. Nothing. Harlan pressed. We've had reports of items left behind, items that could imply distractions. Ms. Carter, is there anything you'd like to disclose? The room went still. This was it. The confrontation she'd feared. Emily straightened, her gaze sweeping the table. Disclose? Gentlemen, if you're implying what I think you are, let's be clear. This company doesn't pry into personal lives unless it affects performance. And mine hasn't faltered. Ellis leaned back. Rumors affect morale. If there's a situation like a pregnancy or family issue, it could explain the recent tension. Pregnancy. There it was, out in the open. My heart pounded. I watched Emily's face. A flash of anger, quickly masked. She stood slowly, hands flat on the table. If you think a woman in my position can't handle situations without crumbling, then you haven't been paying attention. I've led this company through mergers, market crashes, and pandemics. If there's a rumor, it's because someone's spreading it, not because I'm hiding anything. And if you're fishing for weaknesses, look elsewhere. The board members exchanged glances. Harlan cleared his throat. We're just ensuring stability. Stability? Emily's voice rose controlled but cutting. This is about control. You see a single woman at 46 running the show and any whisper of personal matters becomes a threat. Well, here's the truth. There is no pregnancy, no scandal. But if there were, it wouldn't change a damn thing about my ability to lead. Linda shifted uncomfortably. I sat frozen, admiring her poise even as the room crackled with tension. Ellis tried to backpedal. We didn't mean… You did, Emily interrupted. And now you've dragged an employee into this to play detective. He saw nothing because there's nothing to see. End of discussion. The meeting wrapped awkwardly after that. The board mumbled apologies, promised to squash the rumors, and filed out. Linda followed, leaving Emily and me alone. She sank into her chair, rubbing her temples. Thank you, she said quietly, for backing me up. I didn't lie, I replied. Not really. She looked up, a small smile. You could have thrown Sarah under the bus, or me. Why would I? It's not my fight. But it became yours. She paused then. This isn't just about the test. It's the system. Women like me, we climb, we sacrifice, and one crack shows, they swarm. I've been divorced twice because of this job. No kids, no life, and still it's not enough. I nodded, feeling the weight. That sounds lonely. It is. Her eyes met mine again, softer. But talking to you, it's the first time in years I've felt like someone sees me, not the title. We sat there, the bay turning twilight blue outside. I realized then, the misunderstanding wasn't just about the test. It was about assumptions, about her, about power, about what society expected from a woman like her. And in defending her, even silently, I'd stepped into something deeper. Not romance, maybe, but connection. Real, messy, human. As I left, she called after me, "Dinner sometime? As neighbors." I turned, surprised. Yeah, I'd like that. The door closed behind me, and for the first time since that morning, the weight felt a little lighter. The days following that board meeting felt like the calm after a storm. Tentative at first, then gradually settling into something almost normal. The rumors didn't vanish overnight, but they faded. Whispers in the break room shifted to safer topics. The upcoming company retreat, the new coffee machine. No one mentioned irregularities or distractions anymore. Emily's emails returned to their crisp, efficient tone. She started showing up in all-hands meetings again, her presence commanding as ever, steering discussions with the same sharp insight that had built Hailtech into what it was. Sarah, the assistant, took her leave quietly. A family matter, the official line said. No one probed. No one was fired. The board backed off, perhaps realizing they'd overstepped, or maybe just content that the stock had stabilized. I kept my distance at first, sticking to my routines, early mornings with Max, late nights debugging code, walks around the complex at dusk. But the weight I'd been carrying lifted a little each day. I no longer jumped at every Slack ping, no longer scanned hallways for prying eyes. Work became work again. Tickets resolved, systems humming. And Emily? She didn't avoid me anymore. In the elevator one morning, she nodded, even asked about the weather in that casual, neighborly way. Rain holding off today? I smiled, replied something mundane. It felt like a reset. But resets aren't always clean. That weekend, a crisp Saturday morning with the sun breaking through Seattle's perpetual clouds, I ran into her in the parking lot. I was loading groceries into my Subaru, milk, bread, dog food, when her Tesla pulled in beside me. She stepped out, keys jingling, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, hair tied back. She looked rested, almost lighter. Max, spotting her from the back seat, wagged his tail against the window. "Morning," she said, popping her trunk. Her voice was warm, no trace of the office tension. "Morning," I replied, setting down a bag. We stood there for a beat, the courtyard fountain bubbling in the background. She closed her trunk and turned to me fully. "I owe you a thank you, properly." "For what?" "For keeping quiet. For not making it worse." She leaned against her car, arms crossed loosely. "That meeting, it could have gone south fast. You didn't have to back me up." I shrugged, leaning on my own car. I didn't do much, just told the truth. She smiled faintly. In that room? The truth is a weapon. You could have used it. Spilled about the test, about Sarah, but you didn't. It wasn't mine to spill. I paused, glancing at the ground. Besides, I get it now. The pressure you're under, it's not fair. Her expression softened and the lines around her eyes crinkling. Fair? In this world? Rarely. But people like you make it bearable. She straightened, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. We never did that dinner. I chuckled. Life got in the way. How about tonight? As neighbors, no shop talk. I hesitated, then nodded. Sure, I'll bring the wine from last winter. She laughed, a real light sound that echoed off the buildings. Deal! We parted ways then, her heading upstairs with her bags, me finishing with mine. But as I drove Max to the park later, I replayed the moment. The ease in her voice, the absence of that guarded edge. It wasn't flirtation, not really, it was relief. Trust rebuilt, one small exchange at a time. That evening, we met at her place. Nothing fancy, takeout from the Thai spot down the block, shared on her balcony overlooking the courtyard. We talked. Really talked. Not about work, but life. She opened up about her divorces. The first in her 20s, too young, the second in her 30s, buried under ambition. I chose the company over everything, she said, swirling her wine. Now, I wonder if it was worth it. I shared, too, about moving to Seattle after a bad breakup, starting over in IT because it was steady, not a passion. Stability's underrated, I said, but it can feel empty. We laughed about Max's antics, about nosy neighbors, about the absurdity of corporate life. As the sun set, painting the sky in pinks and oranges, the conversation turned deeper. That test, she said quietly. It wasn't just about Sarah, it was a reminder. How fragile it all is. One mistake, one rumor, and poof, gone. I nodded. But you handled it, stood up to them. Because I had to. Women like me, we don't get second chances. She looked at me. But you gave me one by staying silent. I met her gaze. Some things don't need to be said. We sat in comfortable quiet after that, the city lights twinkling below. No grand revelations, no dramatic shifts. Just two people, neighbors, sharing a moment without the weight of secrets. In the weeks that followed, things changed subtly. We waved more often, shared coffee runs on weekends, walked our dogs together. Well, my dog, she didn't have one, but Max adopted her quickly. The office thawed too. She'd nod in meetings, even pulled me into a project once, praising my work publicly. No favoritism, just respect. Looking back, I realized the real lesson wasn't in the drama. It was in the quiet. Growth doesn't always come from shouting truth. Sometimes it's in knowing when to hold them. Emily taught me that, about power, about vulnerability, about the invisible burdens women carry at the top. And me? I learned the line between curiosity and kindness is thinner than I thought. In a world quick to judge, silence can be the kindest act. Our friendship deepened over time, rooted in that shared understanding. No romance, perhaps, but something real. And in the end, that was enough.